what you're facing right now is you have decisions to make among your own projects, and you want to be doing everything at the same time. You want to do all these different things. The key here is that you have dilemmas. And dilemmas are decisions where there are two or more options, and all of them have both positive and negative externalities. Like you do something, and at the very least, it's opportunity cost, right? If nothing else. But also, there may be other things, like you lose out on money if you don't do this thing, you lose out on fame if you don't do whatever, right? Understanding very explicitly what those trade-offs are, what are you trading off when you choose one thing or another thing, is the key to being able to make those hard decisions, because that's how you are able to take the hit up front, basically, and say like, okay, this is what's going to happen. If I spend all my time on project A, I'm not going to have time for project B or project C. Opportunity cost, that means that these things are going to be behind where I want them to be. But project A is what's really important to me, and I need to get to a really solid place with that. And then these other things may feed into that in the future, or they may not. I need to test this all the way through.
So you described my dilemma very, very succinctly. That was perfect. Yes, it's the dilemma about where to prioritize. So the big question then, if I might ask, how do I even start on these other to-do items that will help me feel a lot better and lighter once I get them off my list? They're just emotional baggage at this point, as I'm sure everybody on this call, most people can relate to, without slipping on the other things that are intensely important. I mean, that you don't want to slip back on: health goals, financial goals. How do you have any suggestions if you're taking time away from those goals that you've worked so hard to establish and achieve? Habits, basically, we're talking habits. How do you start on the others without going backwards on the ones that you've already kind of planted?
You don't.
How do you keep everything watered?
You don't. You can't. You're one human being. You have to make decisions.
Hmm. So it's a decision dilemma.
It's a decision dilemma. This is what we do in the Creative Focus Workshop. We go through the collect phase, and the collect phase is the 3 C's, and figuring out what the criteria are for you for good outcomes right now. So, for example, health-related things, that is very important to you, right? Then we make decisions based on that criteria in the second phase of the creative engine, which is goes collect and then decide and then act. And those decisions can be very, very difficult. They can be very challenging. What you're describing is what I call idea debt type N. So idea debt are ideas you carry around with you that you don't finish, right? Things that are just like nagging at you and whatever. And there's type P, which is perfectionism. So things that feel like it's so big and so hard and I can't start. But then there's type N, which is stuff you basically promised an earlier version of yourself that you would do. And that earlier version of yourself is gone. And you don't need to fulfill those promises anymore because that person isn't there anymore. And you need to be able to identify when that's the case and say goodbye to those projects. I actually recommend a sort of Marie Kondo ceremony. Look at those other projects that are things that don't actually line up with what you want out of your life. Thank them for their service, appreciate them, understand, like maybe journal about like what they meant to you when you made this promise to yourself in the past or when you started working on this, and then ceremonially put them away. You don't have to burn them. You don't have to hate them. You just have to put them away and say like, that's not a thing that aligns with what I want out of my life. And sometimes it's less aligned with what I want out of my life. And I know that that's incredibly painful. But what's worse is trying to juggle and maintain all these different things, which is sucking energy away from the main stuff that you are absolutely committed to and you want to do. It's taking your
Yes.
time, it's taking your mental energy.
And that's so scary. What you just described it sounds very scary. Like, oh no, I have to let him go.
Yeah. Well, that's
Committing
why
to
I have an
something
entire
that
course
is
around this.
scary. It's scary. Well, it's very interesting to hear you put it in words, in different words than float around in my brain or maybe other callers, other people here. Am I the only one that finds that terrifying? Like, oh no, there goes that to-do list. It's been something that's been a part of me, that, oh yeah, I'll get it done, but I
Mm-hmm.
might not.
Everyone raise your hand if you also feel awful and terrified about getting rid of things that are past. Yes, you are not alone, Michelle. That's why I run the Creative Focus Workshop. That's why I have these meetings, is because it is incredibly difficult. And the decisions are not, it's not flippant, right? It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's, you have to be absolutely brutal in some ways with yourself and say like, no, the life I want is described by these habits that I've built painstakingly. And this big project, which is going to lead to these other big projects in the future, that is a life I want, And then these other things that are ideas you had, we just don't have space for it all.
Feels like failing. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. To admit that you can't do it, it feels like failing.
Well, you've been told your whole life that you can, that you can
Yeah.
do all the things. Just keep them all going and chip away at all the stuff. But it erodes our quality of life and it erodes our effectiveness. It takes away our ability to be great at the things we really want to be great at. As an artist, there's all kinds of stuff like that for me too, where it's like, this is an idea for a project that I had and I spent money on it. I spent time on it. Am I going to do that? I don't know. Probably not. And so maybe it's time to just get rid of those things.
Yeah, it's very comforting to see like all the comments that I guess a lot of people are dealing with the same thing, and especially to give up because I don't quit. So if you have that kind of a mentality, which it seems like a lot of people here do, to finally say, I give up, that's a big deal, at least to me. To
No,
my
you don't give up, you quit. Quitting is a positive decision. Quitting is a decision that will attribute this energy somewhere else. And that is a decision it's in your power and it's incredibly valuable and underplayed.